Hi, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Briefcase. So, if this is your first time that you've actually tuned into it and you're wondering what the heck it is, Behind the Briefcase is where we interview top execs or people that have got to the top of their chain, the tree, maybe business starters, maybe people that are in management, and we look to uncover what I call the LinkedIn side of things. So LinkedIn shows all the positivity, that shows the business character, but really what we want to be able to see is how did that evolve? How did they become that person? And give you top tips along the way if that's a journey that you wish to explore. In Behind the Briefcase, with all the guests that we have interviewed, there has always been key things to take away, and a lot of people feed that back to us. So if this is your first time watching Behind the Briefcase, you can go to LinkedIn and put in Behind the Briefcase and you will find the page there. But also, if you go over to YouTube and you go on there and you type in Behind the Briefcase, you will see every episode that's been recorded. Now, just to sort of give you some pointers, we've had guests that are high in marketing, high in care services, high in digital services. We've even had influencers that have managed to go on and change law. So a really poignant one that I always push people towards is the interview with Paul McGowan. That's a real great one. Or there's a Christmas special in which we got, I think it was 8 people into a room to have an open discussion on what happened that year and the year ahead. So have a look at that one as well. But there's lots there. There's hours of entertainment. There's hours of learning. So make sure you give us a follow and subscribe and watch them all. So who have we got today for you? Well, I'm really, really intrigued with this one because I have a team, as you can imagine, that go out and find these amazing people for us to interview. And they got really excited by this person. And I thought, oh, I'll just do a little background digging into this person and see what I can discover myself. And it really started to get me excited. And I think you're going to do the same in listening to this because, sometimes we find people that just, whether it's through family, etc., like that, managed to find themselves in a position and they've gone on to success. And you got other people that obviously they came from nowhere. It's just like something happened in their life that made them go, I'm going to do something. And I think today's guest, you're going to find that. And hopefully we'll get into the nitty gritty bit about what it was like starting out and getting to where they've got to today. So who have we got for you today? I'm going to let this person introduce themselves to you. So come on,
Cool.
surprise them all. Who is it?
Hi, Paul. My name's Emma Doney. I am the managing director of Best Life Companions and Day Clubs.
Lovely. So, Emma, I just gave a mention of your backstory there, a little bit about it. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, and we're going to dig into that. But I think what a lot of people are going to get out of today is that it is possible to have an idea, to run with that idea, and to see it come to life. And that can be from anybody in any walk of life. And you are certainly proof of that. And so many people are. And that's kind of where I want to go to, because if I go right back to the beginning, if you like, for you, I just want to get a background in terms of schooling, in terms of upbringing, to actually find out the infrastructure that made the character that you are today. So do you want to give us a little bit of a background history of those early years?
Yeah, of course. So I went to a normal state school, really good state school up in Bedfordshire. I was always sort of a good B grade student, relatively well behaved until I was a teenager. I played a lot of sport, even from primary school. I was always very sporty, always outside. I think I always had a lot of energy as a kid, so my parents were quite keen for me to pursue things like football, hockey. And then I obviously chose my GCSEs, and just to sort of boost being well-rounded, my parents and I discussed what options I had, and business studies came up. So I sort of just took it thinking it sounded interesting and thought, well, I might use it one day, no matter where you end up, because I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was still relatively academic as well, so I did, well in maths and English and that kind of thing. Neither of my parents went to university. Really hardworking. You know, they've got good jobs. But it was only really my auntie that had been to university in my family before me. Then got to A level, still playing sport, still at state school, and I took business study A level, and that was super interesting. I also did environmental science, found that pretty interesting, but to be honest, my friends were taking it, so that slipped in there. And then off I went to uni to study environmental science because that's the one that I felt most passionate about after studying it.
Yeah, I
So
noticed that in your CV. It's sort of like you were a marketing engagement manager for the Met Office at one point. Is that true?
yeah, so
Yeah.
from my degree in environmental science, I then went off to become a weather forecaster, because again, it sounded cool. And there was elements of the job that were outdoorsy, and I obviously am quite an active person.
Yeah.
So went on to become a meteorologist, ended up managing sort of a mini Met Office on Salisbury Plain, which was really fun. Used to let off weather balloons at like 5 a.m. in the morning. So there was still elements that were outdoors, but there was a lot of analysis, matched in with obviously doing a bit of management of staffing. So quite early on in my career, I got sort of a mix of having to do some very detailed things, but also managing people. And previous to that, I'd had lots of part-time jobs as well, working as a support worker and in the care sector. So yeah, I still had quite a mixture of experience. It wasn't all funneled into just one area. And again, I don't think I really knew what I wanted to be or do, even when I was a meteorologist. You're still growing and you don't quite know yourself, I don't think, at 21
But
when you leave uni.
Emma, it's interesting because everybody that I interview on here, there's always a similar sort of backstory I have myself, and that is you don't often find whatever it is that you're starting out with doesn't often become the thing that you end up with. And I say this to a lot of younger people when I'm coaching and mentoring, don't rush into everything. Don't think that you're ever stuck. You've something's gonna come that's gonna grab your attention, give you inspiration and passion and drive you there. But everything up to that point that you may have deemed pointless at the time, all of a sudden becomes huge learning experiences that you can use when you find the thing that you love. And you've mentioned this already. I love the fact that you're sporty, and that maintained, because I think in terms of the sports that you were talking around in hockey, did you say netball as well?
I played literally every sport.
So were they mainly team sports?
Yeah, lots of team sports. Quite a lot of sports where I think females are, probably on a level playing field as
Yeah.
men. Participation is encouraged amongst females, that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I never felt like gender really held me back, and I was quite confident in those sports. My self-esteem was probably quite high at that stage.
Yeah.
There were some sports I was better at the boys, and that was probably just because I played it a bit more than them. But yeah, I think being able to work alongside everyone and having a good knowledge of how other people tick, you can develop that in wherever you are, whether that's, if you did any sort of hobby or club at school. It didn't have to be sport, it might be music, it might be, putting a project together, doing a team project. I think working with other people is really important.
I think that is kind of something that is not pushed enough within the curriculum or upbringing. We just naturally do it, but we're starting to lose it a bit in youth because I don't know, maybe it's to do with social media and PlayStations and Xboxes and things like that. But certainly when I was younger, you were encouraged hugely to either join, for me, join the football team. I was never asked for the basketball team because I'm not tall enough, but it was all that running, those sorts of things. And you're right. What you're developing at an early age there is how to work as part of a team, to work out your position within that team, to listen and be motivated by those around you, to understand that you're being coached and mentored at an early age and the need for that, until you get to a point where you find yourself standing forward with confidence and rallying on the team and looking at how you're going to move forward to actually get that victory, which in essence starts to build the competitiveness that we need as well within us to drive us towards success. So I think in terms of that early development years, whilst there's a lot of academic things that are going on around us, a lot of our social skills, a lot of our listening skills can be picked up through either team sports or team activities, working with people. And I believe when I look at a lot of people who have gone on to be leaders, they've never really looked back enough to realize it started there. It started early, which
Yeah.
is why I always say to people, everything that you are doing, you're actually doing it for a reason. It will connect at some point.
Mm.
So, are you still sporty?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
still sports. Have to fit it in around the kids now, but yeah, one day hopefully they'll come with me. But yeah, the sports were always at school as well, which I think is really important.
Mm.
Like a lot of the sports around where we live seem to be out of school, sort of in addition to school.
Yeah.
And obviously that's slightly harder to access. If you're slightly nervous anyway, it's not with your friendship groups and you're having to maybe form new friendships. Whereas my state school, when I was at school, we all did everything together. There was just all the doors were open, no doors were closed, anyone could take part. And at least I hope that was the case for everyone. Obviously, I was doing all the sports anyway. So yeah, I think my kids are at primary school and I really hope when they get to secondary school that's the case, that they have chance to have a go,
Yeah.
especially as girls, because we know the drop-off rates in sports once girls get to teenage dumb. So fingers crossed for them.
Good stuff. Okay, then I want to just go back. I mean, you mentioned that you'd done business studies. You took it both at A level and then carried on. What did you get out of that, you think, that's connected you to where you are today?
Um, at the time when I was in my GCSE, it felt like common sense studies. Like it was literally questions like, how do you increase the motivation amongst a workforce? And you would have to list off the things and explain why that would increase motivation. And I think because maybe people don't talk about it, it's not as obvious as actually you think.
Yeah.
And I studied, things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Mhm.
the most basic concept of motivation, and security. And a lot of people don't know about it when they get to adulthood. So to learn that as a 14, 15-year-old, I think was really important. And the understanding that actually some people don't have the same opportunities and that not all doors are open to everyone. So just giving me the basic theories behind people and the psychology of how people tick, I think was really, really important for that business GCSE.
I that's one part of it. I fully agree. So just mentioning Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I spent a number of years as a university lecturer, and from that, one of my biggest go-tos was always the basic principles behind Maslow. And I know a lot of people can attack it from all ends, but the reality of the situation is with Maslow is once you've worked out how it works in a real life, your connection power with people is quite astonishing because it is always in one of those layers where the issue is. And once you've found it, you can either attack it or do something about it to support it, to get out of it. But explain to people, just because you got to the top, it doesn't mean it doesn't go all the way back to the bottom, because it's fluent all the time. It only takes one trigger in life, one instant, one traumatic event, and you slip back down. But if you understand how to build it back up and what you need to do about it, you can very quickly build up a resilience level to either self-motivate or be motivated by others. And I think that principle, when I teach it in classrooms now, everybody seems to have heard it, but nobody seems to understand it. And when you explain it and you get them to live it through their own life experiences, they're immediately going, yeah, it's there, it's right there, I can see it now. And it's so predominant. There was a lot of academic theories at university I looked at, and in terms of business studies, and I was like, no way, that's a nice thing to say, but the reality of the world doesn't allow that to happen. But once you actually look at these academic theories and put them into the real world in your context and understanding, it's amazing the changes you can make. The bit that you touched on there, which links into that, something I've been talking about to managers for a number of years. One of the key important parts of management or leadership is actually understanding people's behaviors. It's the psychology that sits behind people. because ultimately, as a manager or a leader, you're trying to get someone to perform at their best, and out of that, understand that not everybody is the same. So when you started out in business, and we'll just step forward to step back in a moment, but when you started out in business at the first time, where it's your money at risk, where it's your dream, your ambition, and you're taking people on, was that people's behaviors, was that something that sort of like you were already attuned to, or something that you started to learn very quickly in that process?
So nobody knows everything, right? But
Yeah.
I had a very good understanding of what an employee was looking for when I looked to take my first companions on. And I've never had my own clients in the business because I know my role. And while I'm really compassionate, I also know that we need someone compassionate behind the desk managing those people. So I've done a little bit of cover to cover clients, but yeah, I've never taken on my own clients because I think as soon as we do that, we lose our ability to manage the actual office. So yeah, I think it is really important, and just being able to know what someone's thinking, or having been in that situation before, you know what that is going to motivate them. So for example, we tend to get a lot of older people that maybe had their careers that want to give back, and they, might have done some volunteering or some befriending, but they're not being paid for it, and their time is so valuable, and they've got so much life experience, often lived experience of caring for their own loved ones, and therefore it's a profession. And I think being able to pay the national living wage as we do, to these very, experienced people, despite probably almost claiming a pension, we know what motivates them. They want to give back, but they can't afford maybe to do it on a voluntary basis. And I think they do deserve to be paid because
Absolutely.
they're very experienced individuals. Yeah, they've been to the school of life, that's for sure.
And the school life is something that should never be dismissed, because that's a full history of experience. It includes failures and successes all the way along the line. So ultimately, that experience is so valuable in terms of understanding people. If somebody's had 65 years of learning about people, then of course they're going to be able to give much more than somebody that's maybe 18, 19, 20 in that part. That's not me doing a disservice to the 18, 19, 20-year-old, because they bring a different skill set. They bring a different form of motivation and innovation that comes with it. And it's finding that balance and that mix. Okay, let's just creep back a bit. So I want to know now where you are at the point, what job are you doing? And then something happens in your life that makes you go, I'm going to start a business. I want to know that period.
Yeah. Okay, this is where it gets exciting and slightly spicy. So I'm working in the civil service. I move around various departments, and everything just feels very slow. I was still working with some incredible people. There were some managers I found really inspiring, and we did some incredible things to progress projects within the civil service. But it ultimately wasn't on my terms. It wasn't fighting for a mission. Obviously, I'm quite a passionate person, and I know there's a lot of problems in the world to be solved. So I had my first daughter, and I thought, well, if this isn't a go for it moment, I don't know what is, because I really need some flexible working when I come back from maternity leave. And this potential opportunity is going to give me that, but I can also work harder than I potentially have worked before. I wouldn't say I was like completely run off my feet in the civil service. I would often have to ask for more work. So I think having the ability to work on something with other people that I was really passionate about was so easy to get behind. And like you say, when it's your own money and you've invested something in it, you're going to make it work. I see a lot of people going for investment rounds and things. I think if it wasn't my money, it would be so much easier to spend and maybe not as efficiently. So I'm really proud that we're bootstrapped and we haven't taken external funding. And I really would like to explore talking to other founders that have done that, because I think it's good for everyone. It's particularly good as an example for small business, but there's not a lot of books out there written about it. Yeah.
Well, Emma, you're speaking to someone now who has been in that exact same position. So every business that I've started has literally been on a shoestring budget, or it's been the remortgage and refinance of my own
Yeah,
house at that
that's the
point, to which has obviously caused, well, it's at points caused issues within the house, the household, because you're risking everything every time. You truly believe in it, something inside you just wants to do it and make it happen. I mean, I look at a trading company and I remember setting aside £20,000 that I had saved up and said, I'm going to have a go at this myself. And if the £20,000 runs out, we're in trouble. And there's whole backstories that are associated to that where we were in big trouble. But now I look at the business today, and there's over 350 people associated to it, and you're thinking,
yeah.
if only they knew how close we were so many times to we've run out. So I look at the private equity investors sometimes and think, wouldn't it be amazing if somebody just gave you £2 million and said, we want you to grow? But ultimately, I believe you lose elements of control. And everything about the businesses I have, I love to think there's a blueprint of me in there and the reason why we're doing it. And that carries the story. So you've had your first child. We're going to start this business. How old are you then, Emma, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh my goodness. 28, I think.
28.
Yeah.
So you've got a
28.
bit of life experience. You've done a bit of management. You've been in different parts. You've learned a little bit about business through studying and people's behaviors and management. You've led a team within the metal. So you're really starting to develop in terms of marketing experience, engagement experience, analytics, all the things that the tools that you actually need to run a business. And at that point, then you see an area or a gap that isn't being filled or supported in the way that you like. You've got a safe job, that it's going to give you a nice pension, I would imagine, and could probably be a lifelong job if you wanted it to be. And something inside of you says, I have to take this challenge on. I have to do it. Now, you've mentioned about flexibility and things like that. But I think a lot of people have this feeling that, oh, if I was self-employed or I started my own business, I could do my own hours, etc. like that. I bet you were doing many more contracted hours in those early stages than you had ever done in your working life previously.
Absolutely. And every moment of the day you have spare, wherever you are, whether you're in front of a laptop or not, you're thinking about it. So it instantaneously becomes more stressful than your previous salary job.
And were you married at this time?
Yeah. So I got married when I was 25. Yeah. My husband was military.
So you've started the business, or you're about to start the business. You have the conversation with the husband at that time. What's the feeling?
I think he and I both knew deep down that I was very entrepreneurial. So it was going to happen at some point. And he's very, very supportive. Like, obviously, we know each other very well. And even during my maternity leave, I felt quite passionate about maternity services in our area and making sure, we gave back. So me and a friend started a baby pop-up shop and sold donated clothes because there's a very good business opportunity there. There's not any charity shops that are dedicated to just children's clothes or baby clothes in particular outside of London. And if that was all in one place, particularly with maternity wear as well, like obviously vintage wasn't a thing then, but yeah, we basically got everyone to donate their old stuff and then raised £10,000 in under a month, and we were only open 4 hours a day.
Yeah, because amazingly, actually, when you talk like that, you can see it, because these are clothes that will only be worn for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so they're almost brand new still towards the end. So yeah, I wonder why that is true. It's always adult clothing that you find in the charity shops. So I can see where the model was. So have you, at that point, you mentioned about giving back, and we'll get onto your mission statement in a moment, because I think that says it all about you. You talk about being an entrepreneur. Has there been any point in your life where you thought, I want to create businesses that create wealth for my family to give me a different life? Or are your businesses created more along the lines of the opportunity to give something to everybody else?
Yeah, I think I am a true empath. So if I spot a problem that can be solved and it's going to help a lot of people, that's normally the go for it moment for me. Particularly if I know there's funding there, like because it was a very localized charity we were supporting, I knew everyone would get behind it. And we had so many volunteers, like we had 2 different WIs that volunteered, had all of my mum friends that I'd met in baby groups. So it was quite a simple concept. And it's the same with Best Life, you know, we're very local centric. We're obviously B Corp as well, so everyone knows we're ethical. And I think in health and social care, sometimes people, it's the first time they maybe have had to ask for support, and they just need to know that they can trust you. So being very locally centered and matching people based on interests and location for us, it just means we really get under the skin of what is a long-lasting and trusting relationship, and it just works.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the why, isn't it? Why you're doing it. You've got to have that purpose. So completely aligned to that. Okay, so I may pronounce this wrong now. So when you actually decide to move into the world of care, if you like, I know you mentioned earlier in your career you'd taken part-time jobs as a support worker, so you dipped your toe into it, and then coming out of it and done completely different things. I know your backstory is that your grandma goes into a care home. She has Alzheimer's disease, but there was no other options available on the table. You seem to be looking around to find out, well, what are my choices here? And that became the option available. At that point, you start to think along the lines of, I'm going to create a business that actually fills that gap. So is it Adorno Companionship? Adorno Companion, right? Okay,
that was our first brand.
Okay, so you start Adorno. What are you starting that with? Talk me through the first couple of months of starting that up.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So I went into business with my best friend's mum. She was dealing with sort of a similar situation at the time. She had her parents that she was caring for. One of them had dementia, and there was just the dom care that was being offered. It feels slightly over medicalized. People are very task orientated, and I've worked in these companies as well. I've worked with children with autism and cerebral palsy, but also elderly, frail adults. And the difference between the 2 offerings is very stark. So dom care, domiciliary care, you tend to be dressed in a pseudo nurse's uniform. It tends to be quite, this is my experience obviously, it tends to be quite task orientated. You'll go in and do things for people, whereas when I was working with the children, it was very much hobbies and interests focused. You would still have to do personal care. There was personal care on both sides, but there was no uniform when we were working with children. Slightly less paperwork, not that we didn't do the required paperwork, but it was the focus of the day was longer shifts. To go out, I used to go to the cinema with these kids. We used to go on long walks. There was allowances. They would have budget to go and, I don't know, have an ice cream. Whereas the focus on the dom care side of things, when I was caring for elderly people, was very much, we're coming in to issue your medication to you or make your breakfast, warm up a microwave meal that's already in your fridge, and it's the same model every time. So yes, it was quite noticeable working in those 2 different areas.
So what's your first thought process that you wanted to bring more of the children's services style over to the adult services style? Was that your first premise?
Absolutely. I'd also been working as a mentor, this is pre-kids, to a child that was in foster care. And that experience again, it was called the Independent Visitor Scheme. Every council is duty bound to have one, and it is about befriending and matching with someone that you've got interest with. And at the time I must have been mid-20s, but yeah, it was all about bringing joy and vibrancy and probably stimulation to that child. So we would just go out and have 25 quid a visit, and we would go and play crazy golf and we would go. Some of these kids had never been to a restaurant before, so I took this little girl, bless her, to Pizza Express for the first time. Which I remember the first time I went to Pizza Express, I was like, this is so posh. So yeah, it's just about that joy and just a little bit of zazz back in their lives.
Yeah, I can see exactly where you're coming from, because I think, and I'm not laying this blame at the feet of domiciliary companies, but normally they are taking on packages of care through the local authority, and the local authority has put the tasks in there and the time limit in there, that it is quite literally, in some cases it's a security check, so are they okay? They've not fallen over, have they eaten, have they taken the meds, all the things that you mentioned. Which is why when you sort of like see 4 visits a day in the half an hour visits, there's not really a lot that you're going to be able to do in that time when you've got tasks associated to it. So you've decided to go in there and you've decided to change that model up. Was that embraced by social care well, or did you find challenges in terms of trying to get funding for this?
I've still not got a framework contract with my local authority, not out of want of trying. And we will get there. I think I'm very close to that stage now, but I think it's very much, and I've spoken to them about the commissioning managers at my local authority about this. It's very much focused on the bigger providers, and the commissioning process, which by the time I'm done with it will look very different. It's not focusing on small businesses being able to get through it. One of the things I was picked up on my most recent bid was I hadn't provided a policy statement on my supply chain and committing to pay my suppliers within 30 days. It's like, I don't have a supply chain, really. Okay, I have some suppliers, but I don't have the same finance package that is going to provide a report to you on and provide evidence that I've paid all my suppliers within 30 days. And I just think it's really discriminatory when the government is really pushing small businesses to be on these frameworks. The councils haven't caught up yet, but then, in a silent room, one voice is loud. So I'll tell them what it's like from this side of the fence, and one day they'll understand it because I'll have told them what it's like.
Absolutely. So did you find in the first instance that you were having to seek out private paying clients?
Yeah. So I'd say 80% of our clients are private payers. I don't know what percentage in the country actually, and I don't know if the stats are even out there to know what percentage of people over 65 say have their care paid for them, because you would never know how many people are having it privately. But we are absolutely accessible to everyone. We can have local authority pay for us through direct payments, which is a really great scheme.
Yes.
So we do have a couple of people using that, but then they need the know-how to get that, for one, and not many people know about it. And we also have a lot of people using their attendance allowance, which again, 1.4 million people a couple of years ago were not claiming that over the age of 65, and it's not means tested, which a lot of people don't realise. So they help. But yeah, I would love to make us more accessible to more local authority funded clients. Some councils are better than others, but like I say, we're in business to make the system better. So I feel duty bound to make a relationship with these commissioning managers and make sure that I'm sort of advocating for other small businesses as well, to show, the government's telling you to positively discriminate for us. Please, can you give us some clarification questions before you tell us the answer 4 months down the line? That's just a flat no because we failed on one thing out of 40.
Yeah. Do you find that your working in the civil service helped you have more experience around things like attendance allowance and that other people may not have had? Because I actually think what you've just said there is what I preach a lot, particularly to up and coming managers or people that are self-starting businesses, is become the expert, because the person that's coming to you is in the first instance coming to you for advice. They don't know what to do. They've been dropped into a system somehow. And I'm sure you maybe experienced this yourself, particularly with the story on your grandmother, and a lot of people experience this. they don't know how funding works. They don't know what the cap is. They don't know how much they'd have to pay to hear the word third party top up. They wonder what the heck that is, the private funding, the cost of care. And that can all of a sudden be something that they're dropped into the ocean on by the click of a finger. I often say this, just to give an example, mum's out in the gardening normally at the age of 78, and it's a sunny day and everything's going well. And she lives on her own, and she looks after her own needs. And that night she has a stroke. And now all of a sudden she is dropped into the world of social care. She's in healthcare, but then into social care. And the family members have never, ever experienced what social care is like. They don't know anything about it. And the reach out now to get information, and we may think there's so much information out there, but actually what you want at that moment in time to speak to a person. And it's not about reading information. It's not about doing the research yourself. And a lot of people are ringing local authorities now thinking that's where you go to, and they're not getting as much accessible information that was available back in the my early start to the career. And that's due to funding issues and us moving more down an electronic route. So if they reach out to you either as a manager or a business owner, their expectation is that you should know the information that they need, that you can hold the hand through the guiding part of that and build that relationship and trust immediately. And I see that missing in so many managerial positions, because they'll just say, oh, you need to contact social services on the phone. No, you've got them on the phone because they need advice. So that's why I mentioned about, for you, is it important that you can help people at that moment straight away with your knowledge experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're a team of 4 in the office,
Mhm.
and we've all got lived experience of caring for someone, either dementia or another nasty. And we're all providing advice all the time, whether we like it or not. I've written multiple blogs about funding, how to treat someone with dementia, how to make sure they're more compliant, how to get them on side. The advice is endless, because until you've been there, you can't really truly understand it, particularly for people my age. And I find increasingly now my friends are getting to the age where their parents do need social care, and they are starting to get it. So I guess maybe because of what happened with my nan, I'm sort of not very nice, but experienced it earlier than maybe other people have. So yeah, they come to us all the time.
Going back to the empath, that's giving you the empathy, because someone that comes to you now is in the exact position that you found yourself in. And I'm sure at that time, whether you had someone that was there for you that gave you all that information, or whether you had to go source it yourself, you want to make sure you are that person that can help that person in that situation. And it's so, to me, the care industry itself is, there's only one word I always use for the care industry to anybody that I either teach or within the businesses, and I say trust. That's what we have to trust in everything we do. We have to trust that we're getting the right advice. We have to trust that our loved one is being cared for. We have to trust that we are not being screwed for every penny, that there's nothing left. We have to trust the system. And once that trust gets eroded or broken, it's over at that point. So you need to be that person that is actually building that trust all the time, building that credit, if you like, with the person to say, no, I can help you, because that's what our job is. That's the way I see it. We're there to help in the first instance. So, Emma, you start off with the company, you're going after the private clientele. Did your background in marketing help you there? How did you get your company to become known? Because I would imagine you didn't start with £1 million in the bank and went out to a marketing agency.
Nope, not at all. So I think I started, maybe, how much we have in the bank? I think we maybe put like 10k in the bank initially. There was a lot. I'm a very good networker. I don't try, it just sort of happens. And I think that comes from traveling. I think that comes from going to university. It's ultimately just practice. Like, if you throw yourself into the deep end and you don't know anyone, you are forced to meet new people. And now I absolutely love it, because you very quickly realize that there's more people out there than just the people in your back yard, you know. So yeah, initially the marketing was all leafleting. So I just went around my local town, did lots of presentations to local WIs, Rotary clubs, and just really got on side with the people of that demographic that I knew it would sit with. It really, really helped. And I don't know if this was subconscious or conscious, but it really helped that I'd had that maternity project with the pop-up shop, and I had the WI volunteering, so I already knew some people locally that I potentially could scoop up and employ. But yeah, totally different industries. So just know, like, word of mouth was the initial marketing tool. I did speak to a lot of signposters, so age-related charities, dementia wellbeing services. Who else did I present to? Age UK, just to offer people the options. You know, they don't recommend us, they just signpost to us. But obviously, as soon as a signposter has signposted to us, the client is going to trust you pretty quickly. So often that's our marketing now. But yeah, initially it was just outreach to these various organizations, and then someone would say, "Oh, have you heard what Emma's doing now?" And we'd very recently moved to the town we live in now as well, so it was from nothing. Like, before that pop-up shop we did, I didn't really have any contacts, so it has been ground up. My both sides of our family live 2.5 hours away, so
Right. So
it was a very new area for us.
So with that, and I'm just going to ask the question. I've asked it of myself so many times. In those early days, there is moments that come across your mind where you go, "Why am I doing this? This is madness." Yeah. So, did you experience that? Because they're the hardest days. I always say it's a bit like the best workout you'll ever do in the gym is the day you don't want to go and you force yourself to go. And I think business is the same. You're waking up in the morning, you don't want to do it anymore. Why have I put myself in this position? And you just got to find a way to get up and do it. But those moments, how did you find you overcame those moments where you had self-doubt, or you didn't realize whether, you didn't know whether you could financially support it anymore? They must have been there in the early days.
I'm quite a positive person, so yeah, I absolutely had multiple versions of that same "what have I done" kind of moment. So I would ultimately probably go on a very long dog walk. I mean, those initial "what have I done" moments were all during COVID as well, because we started the business in April 2019. So we were just getting somewhere by March 2020, and then boom, lockdown, April. So I remember going on lots of long dog walks with a very young toddler. And there was moments where I did have to get other jobs again, and that's absolutely fine. Like, I don't know why. I think initially I just did the business because I thought I need to focus on this and see what happens, and that gave me the headspace to obviously make a plan in my head of what I wanted it to look like. But then I very quickly did go and get another job because I recognized that 500 quid that I just spent on leaflets was only going to give me 4% returns. So while it was good investment, it needs topping up sometimes just to get you rolling. And even now, we need occasional top ups, but we are profitable. So it's just about having measured risk, but so much of it is on gut as well. Like, will this work? And having those conversations with people that understand you and are also, positive and have a growth mindset. Obviously I have friends around me that sometimes they're like, "Oh, are you sure?" And I'm like, "I'm not talking to you for at least 2 weeks."
So going back, you about 7-8 years now into this business?
So 2019, it was financial year start, and what are we? 7 years it'll be
7 years.
On like the 4th of April, something like that.
Okay, so 7 years on, you're covering some area now. It's not just sort of like, I always look at these sort of businesses and go, it starts off from the bedroom, really, the bedroom office, on a laptop. So now you've mentioned the people in your office, you've got a team around you, in terms of there's people that you employ outside of that and wider. There'll be other relationships you have with stakeholders. Looking back now and that journey you've gone on, what are you most proudest of?
What am I most proud of? Where we are right now, like, undoubtedly, like the journey we've been on and the team we've got around us. Like, everyone is so passionate about what we do. our office team of 4, like they are in it for the long run. They're all so committed to the cause. I'm no longer in my office bedroom. I'm now in my front room bedroom, but in my front room we can fit 3 desks, and this is our space. So, and that's all about keeping our overheads low, as you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're very proud of where we've got, and we say it to each other all the time. You know, we've provided employment to a lot of people that maybe otherwise wouldn't have had a job they're as passionate about. We've helped hundreds of people live their best lives, and some of our matches last 4 or 5 years. You know, we've still got clients that are matched 5 years later now. Our clients, like, I'd hate to say it, but I'd love to do a test on life expectancy of someone that has our services versus someone that doesn't, because I genuinely think we are extending people's lives and their quality of life as well. We've got multiple people in their 90s that have companions, and they've had them for a couple of years, and when they go into hospital, their companion follows them. They still have their visits. You know, we're always making sure that we're trying to transition back home again, and making sure, you know, there's food in the cupboards, the medications discharged with them. There's just a lot of passion, and I think that's what I'm most proud of.
So when you look back to that initial dream, if you like, of when you were starting out, are you looking back and going, good girl, Emma, you done it. You set it out, and you're 7 years on, you're still here, you're still going. And we all know in business, you know, the most difficult period is year 1, then year 2, and year 3. If you make it past year 3, you actually have a fighting chance. And not a lot of people understand how many businesses go under financially within those first couple of years. So 7 years on, you now get a level of stability. Your branding is out there. You're well known. You've been recognized by awarding bodies, etc., like that. You've got a history of the company. So yeah, looking back, you did what you set out to do.
Yeah.
Or have you yet?
So next step is probably to start a new branch somewhere else. I would quite like to take this footprint and make sure that it can help other people in other areas. We're going to continue to extend. Obviously, we cover Bristol, South Gloucestershire, Bath area. Any further than that, you kind of don't become local anymore, and people are very far away when it comes to, you know, we have staff socials, and we've already got people driving from Weston-super-Mare to the Cotswolds to come to those twice a year. So it's quite a big area. But yeah, no, we're by no means done yet. I've still got juice in the tank. So,
and husband's in the business as well. I noticed on the records, he's the man holding the purse strings.
He likes to think so. He's a very good bookkeeper.
But the decision, how many battles is there in the household when you want to spend in a certain area and you say no?
All the time. Very healthy battles.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a very good relationship. So luckily, you know, it always comes good. But yeah, who could be a better sort of advocate and someone to bounce your ideas off than your other half?
Do you know, the thing is, I always say, because in every business I've had and worked within, my wife has always been, she's always been the second member of staff to the business. You know, I've always been the first and she's always been the second. So in other words, I've always said, if you take her out of the equation and leave it to me, we're in serious trouble, because I'll just run off somewhere to do something and then change my mind and go in a different direction. So she's what I class the anchor to it all. There is very healthy battles that go on that you would never want HR around to listen into, because you wouldn't get away with it. And I often think to myself, especially with family being at the core, I think you kind of need that in the early stages, because there's so much tension and anxiety, and a lot of people will look at someone that's had successes or managed to achieve what they wanted to achieve, and they see that person at that moment in time for who they are, and whether envy or influence comes into it, they just think that this person came up with an idea, and because of that idea this happened, and they missed the journey that the person went on to get there. My kids do that to me. You know, they seem to think I was just born as me now, and it was all there. They forget about, the years and years of working as a care worker in a care home, or, still going doing night shifts. So you have to say to them, no, it's hard bloody work. It's not, it's harder work than actually going and getting a job, because you have all the pressures of everything and everyone on your shoulders 24/7. So it's sort of like, sometimes you do have to just, and I like to do this on this podcast, just step back for a minute, look at the picture that you painted and admire it.
Yeah.
Because too often we don't. We're always trying to paint a new picture, or the picture's got to be better. But look at where you were and where you are now. That's a journey that you created. And, if your husband's been a part of it, if other people have been a part of it, they should get to share the joy of that journey as well, because the pressure that we put on each other is immense from time to time. So, yeah. So I'm sure those healthy battles will continue, and they get harder as you grow, Emma. That's the problem, because what I've often found in business is, when I often started off a business and you had no money, you literally, like you said with the leaflets, you are looking at every penny spent and going, what am I getting from it? And then when you find yourself with money, you can take your eye off the ball and lose that stringent focus. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're a PR company that can do outside marketing for you, and you will make such an amount of money. Or we can build you a brand new website for £30,000, and the traffic flow to it will be amazing. Before you know it, you're spending large sums of money and getting zero return from it. And it's a thing that tricks a lot of businesses. They think the more we that spend to accumulate. I'm going to be honest with you. I get the philosophy behind it, but if you spend it in the wrong areas, you don't accumulate, you lose. And at that moment, you've just got to be very mindful, because you lose the basis, that gut instinct of, are they really going to be able to deliver that? And that's the bit where you have to step back from it sometimes and look. So you need that person in your life that stops you going, oh no, I spoke to them, it's going to be amazing, it's going to be wonderful, the social media is going to go through the roof. And really, that person turn around and say, really, have you done the numbers?
Exactly.
Otherwise you just go ludicrous, and you put everything at risk that doesn't need to be put at risk. So I'm looking forward to watching your company grow more and more, because I actually think the concept that's behind it, the passion, I think it's led by someone that hasn't lost any of that passion, that's still doing it for the reasons that they started off with in yourself. And that is only going to take it, higher and higher. And if anybody is going to go in and change the commissioning opinions or contracts, I'm sure it's going to be someone like yourself that does it, because you're shouting in that room, maybe alone. But I agree that the contracts seem to have gone to the large corporate type businesses very easy, but yet what occurs off the end of that, and I'm probably doing myself a disservice here in case people I know are listening, is the service that's delivered isn't the same service that was expected. Whereas I think with smaller businesses, it's not all about the money. Yes, you need to make money, you need to pay people, you need profit out of it. But ultimately, if you do something that's not right, you feel that pain 100 times over, and you do something about it very quickly because it's small and it means so much to you. And sometimes when you're too large, you start to look at stats and go, well, it's, we're doing all these hours and this has happened here. It's a very small percentage, we shouldn't worry about it, when actually you should worry about every percentage, every safeguarding, everything that goes wrong. That's my opinion anyway. I think you just got to be very careful.
I think there's something around buying local as well, isn't there? Maybe the commissioners are trying to battle to get their budgets down, but if they're buying all their services in from other providers, then those people working for them aren't going to be local either. And there's so much pressure now around being ethical and sustainable, and there's measures around that you have to bid on, that, is it ESG, I think the measures are called? Obviously we've got B Corp, so we have a lot more that we have to do. But if a B Corp isn't getting through the commissioning process, something going wrong there.
Something's wrong. They've just put a label behind it or a title. A couple of questions that my team wanted me to throw at you, so I will go to these list of questions now. Just a few. They must have read in a blog somewhere where you have put the importance of familiar routines to people, especially in a dementia diagnosis. Is this something that is part of your business framework, that the relationship, but you talk about matching people, a companion. I just want to sort of like just touch on that very quickly. When you say about matching people, are you looking at who it is that needs a service and who is best suited for that service, not just on skills and experience, but on a whole lot of other things? Talk me through how you match someone up.
Again, with a lot of gut. So they're matched based on interests and location, but ultimately it's a lot on personality as well. So we have loads of companions on our books, and we will look at who's closest. We've got them all mapped. We will have a discussion in the office about who we think will match best. If they've asked for a male companion, we'll try and send a male. And we do try and match men with men generally. I think as well, because we don't provide the personal care element, that's slightly easier for us. So ultimately, we say we treat the first month as a trial to see how they get on, but we are very open with clients and their families, because often it's the daughter or son organising our services, to say, if this doesn't work, then we can review. There's other companions, and we'll talk about the chemistry. And the companions, it's the same. We've had some matches that just don't work out, and that's fine. We can send someone else. But if you've got transparency around that, I think that's okay. Whereas maybe with other carers, they might have to put up with some people that they don't want to come. So yeah, it works very well. I advertised once for someone that was interested in bird watching. I had the deputy head of biodiversity at the council apply. That was a good match. I've had snooker players. I've found like semi-professionals that are retired now that have then gone off and taken a chap up the miners club. I've had people that really love cold water swimming, particularly a client with MS I can think of. We've matched her up that someone can take her swimming.
I love
All
this.
sorts of matches. But like I said, it's not just about the interests, although that really helps. It is definitely, are they part of the same community, and are they going to click? Do they have chemistry?
Do you have to be CQC registered for that?
No, we don't provide any personal care.
Because you're not providing personal services.
And I was going to come on to say, actually, the commissioners are now looking at providing more non-regulated services, because obviously I think that personal care should be more expensive than what we provide, because obviously there's so much more overhead that comes with being CQC registered, not just the fees. Whereas actually we see it going the other way. What we're providing, obviously isn't cheap, because we're providing really good company for people. But then the dom care providers are undercutting us in places, but providing non-regulated care. So it's in the best interests of the council to use more unregulated care, because then you should hopefully get it for cheaper. But it's gone the other way. It's really bizarre.
So on that basis, then, with it being unregulated services, have you had to put systems and processes in place that almost conform to regulated services? So checks, balances, processes. Are you doing pretty much the same as what a regulated service would do in the background of that?
Similar, yeah. So obviously all of our health and safety policies we still have to abide by. GDPR is still a nightmare for us. From like a cost perspective, obviously we still have to pay people when they hit NIC contributions, pension thresholds. We still have all of our policies in place. The things we don't have to deal with are the CQC. So we don't have that burden overhanging us. We don't have to do things like write up notes of exactly what happened on every visit, because we really focus on spending time with that person. So it is slightly different. We should be cheaper.
But Emma, I agree with what you just said there, because I believe we have gone too regulated, that we are removing more of the care element, and it's very much around the bureaucracy. So you talk about, we have now got a regulator, and I see this every day, who is asking for care plans or support plans to be written as if Edith Blyton had to write them. And understanding that I don't want to do a big disservice, because I'm one of these people. When I left school and went into care to work as a care worker, I hated school. So I was your sports person, but hated the academic side of things. Most people in care at that time were people that decided not to go to college or university, and they found themselves into care because care had an open arm to them. So they weren't the most academic of people. It wasn't your grade A students that were moving into care. But what they had was this ability of compassion and empathy and love and nurturing that they actually propelled into that industry and climbed. But now since regulation has been so enforced, you're asking them to do things or write things that actually that they keep mentioning these are legal documents. And yes, they are legal documents, but it's not lawyers that are writing these documents. So it's
No.
more and more training about key words that need to be fitted into it. And what you are actually doing is removing the element of care. You're taking away that risk, the positive risk element of things, because nobody wants to take the positive risk. But at the same time, you've got the regulator saying you must take positive risk. And you're going, but every time I try that, we
Yeah.
get you coming at us from another angle. So I actually think the whole regulation, although it's there as a huge safeguard, you actually have to look at it and go, but what are we destroying by
Yeah.
enforcing so much regulation?
Yeah, completely with you. And there was a moment where I nearly registered to be CQC registered in the early days, where obviously business wasn't coming in as fast as I had wanted it, which was obvious when you're starting from nothing. And if we had provided personal care, we would have had people queuing up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But looking at the CQC, it was too much of a risk to take the cost of it, to be honest, on. But one day I would love to, understand how they regulate, how they do their inspections, because I'm sure I could provide a lot of consultancy on that.
Absolutely.
Having done what we've done now.
100%. Okay, so I'm gonna sort of we've gone way past the hour, so thank you very much for your time, Emma. But it's
No
been
worries.
so interesting getting to know you, which is why I love doing these things. And I hope if you're listening to this, you're looking at it and going, I could be an Emma. I have this same belief. So Emma, what, in terms of, if you were giving advice to someone that wanted to become a companion or wanted to start their own business wherever Spirit was, what would your advice be to them?
I think if you spot a problem that needs solving and there's other people that want to solve it with you or feel passionate about it for you, then there's a go for it moment. And I think the most important part of owning your own business isn't how clever you are, isn't, how much sport you played, it's your resilience and it's how passionate you are about it. And a lot of courage. So if you've got courage, resilience, and passion, you're gonna make it. So it's gonna be okay.
Absolutely. And if you were looking back now, would you change anything?
That's a big question. I mean, no regrets. I did what I had to do at the time, so I can't think of anything.
I love that. I love that. Listen, there's so many things I could look back on and say, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't spent the money there. I wish I hadn't invested in that. That was a mistake. But ultimately, over time, you look back and go, oh, I'm glad I've done that, because when that went wrong, I changed course to this and this worked.
It's
So
all
I
a
think,
learning experience.
yeah, absolutely it is. And you always, you're always going to make mistakes. You're always going to place your hand in the wrong area. And again, it's about, well, let's not get stuck there. Where do we have to move to? And that's a key thing. It's everything in life. So I think you're an absolute inspiration in terms of what you've done, because you had, to me, although you may have gone on it into it, and I think every business does this, and I think if every leader was being open and honest, it's like when I started a business, not, I can turn around and say, because I wanted to make the lives of people better. I wanted to teach people in classrooms to a higher level. I wanted to give back. No, my first instance was starting a business was about me. It was about, can I create a better life for me and my family and do something that I love doing? And in doing that, it inspires or it gives back to people. So I think when you look back, your journey to do that is the motivation that you need to carry on, because you've got that goal and ambition. But just as a last point on that, I think a bit of advice that I would always give, and I'm sure you are going to say the same thing because you mentioned it early on, is when you go into business, all of a sudden there is a lot of things you discover that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
And that networking's key, isn't it? Because there's
Yeah.
always someone out there that does know about it and will spend the time to talk you through it or tell it. So when you mentioned about the support people behind you, it is a case of you need to get yourself out there, because there is lots of free advice out there. It's a bit like, if you sat and listened to this podcast, it's free advice. It's not, you're not being charged for it. So you've just got to throw yourself in and find the right people that will actually turn around and spend half an hour with you and say, okay, the reason why that came back into the pot for your profit and loss is because you can't claim it. And you're going, but it was a business holiday to Monaco. No, it wasn't. And it is about, when you go into business, you will go into it. And what you are originally, in most cases, is an operator. So you believe that it can be done, and you go in and you run the operational side of it to make sure it can be done. But then what occurs is, I always class them as, in the nicest possible sense, I'm sure my accountant, if he's listening in, will have heard this many times, the vulture businesses that sit alongside that business, that you actually need them to do things like end of year accounts and whether it's buying policies and procedures in, or whatever it may be, legal advices. They're going to take from your business. So you have to, all of a sudden, you just give them money because you don't know anything else. And you have to learn that side very quickly to realize when you need them and when you don't need them, instead of just giving them everything. And I learned that through mentors, not paid mentors. I just went and became friends with them. They probably never looked at me and went, oh, I'd like to be his friend. I just pushed my way in to sort of say, you need to be my friend because I need your brain now.
If you have to ask someone to be your mentor, they're probably not mentoring you anyway. I accept mentors from all angles, and it's very informal, isn't it? So
absolutely, I think they're the best type, because they're the one you just a cup of coffee with them. Oh, I have this issue and I'm not 100% certain about it. You talk and it just comes out, and you go, oh, that's bloody genius. Okay, I got it. Brilliant. Right, the last question of the day, and it's one we ask everybody. You're going for dinner. There's 3 people, they can be past or present, that you're going to be able to invite, and they will definitely come. Who are they?
Oh, juicy question. That's great. Sarah Davies, Dragon's Den. Yeah, love her. Another hard worker. Who else? Jane Goodall.
Okay.
Fascinating scientist. Who's the third? Moana. I think she's a great sailor.
All female.
All female.
So are you an empowerer for females to get their backsides into business and show the world?
I would expect so.
I absolutely. And I think it's something that social care I've been banging this drum for a long time. Social care needs more females at the top of the chain. It is critical, because how can you have an industry where 89% of people that support people are female, and yet it flips itself completely at director level? It's ridiculous. We got to break through that glass ceiling, and the people that start on the ground end up at the top. They don't get blocked halfway. So I'm a massive advocate.
I think that starts at school, unfortunately.
I agree with you.
There's my USP.
Emma, I have loved this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people get a lot from it. If somebody's listened to this and they're wondering, I'd like to connect with Emma. Are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah, we've got our own website, bestlife.org.uk. Check us out.
Have a look. And certainly if you are in the southwest area, would be Bristol.
Yeah, we're Bristol. Yeah.
If you're in the southwest area and what you've heard here is something that interests you, being a companion and helping to not just change someone's life, but maybe keep their life going with the things that they love doing, I'd reach out because I actually think it's a great thing. You know, you've mentioned there about, deputy heads of councils, ex-snooker players, etc. Like that, just giving something back, and at the same point, it's a job as well. So there's a reward from it. And I think when myself and Emma were speaking off camera, there is a huge area here for people who maybe have found themselves coming to a retirement age or don't want the stresses of the job that they were in, and they just want a nice job where they can get absolute satisfaction from what they're doing. I think there's a huge avenue there. As Emma's openly spoke about, there's many people that are companions who have passed retirement age, and there's a window of opportunity. So I'd reach out to her if you're thinking along them lines, and have that conversation pick up. But from me, we have ended another episode of Behind the Briefcase, and I want to thank you very much for your time in listening through. I think we've had a spectacular guest today. Can't wait for this one to go out for you to listen to it. And please feedback in the comments, and if there's anything that you want to ask Emma in those comments, we'll make sure to pass it on and connect you. As I said, if you have enjoyed this, please give it a like, please give it a share, get it out into the community. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube, and that way you'll get notified of all the ones that are up and coming, and you'll be able to watch all the ones that have been before. Marketing will tell me we're on Spotify and other things. I've not got a clue on that. I just turn up, sit in this chair, and get the absolute pleasure of speaking to people like Emma. But what I will do is leave you with this one. Wish you well, and see you again in 2 weeks' time for another episode of Behind the Briefcase. Thank you, Emma, and thank you to you for
Bye.
listening.